I am Kevin Burkum, CEO of U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action. We are a farmer-led organization that works to champion the voice of farmers and ranchers on key issues. As a farmer-led organization, we represent 700,000 U.S. farmers across the country. I'd like to thank Senator Grassley, Kelsey from USDA, our USFRA Vice Chair, Chip Bowling, Kevin Lindemer from S&P Global, all for being here today. We are here to announce the results of what we think is a landmark study on biofuels, fueling agriculture, biofuels as the catalyst. And this demonstrates how biofuels can improve farmer incomes, revitalize rural economies, drive innovation, and strengthen agriculture's ability to feed and fuel the world using fewer resources. And it comes at a pivotal time for agriculture. We are at a crossroads for U.S. agriculture. Productivity continues to increase across American farms. We just are coming off our largest crop on record. At the same time, evolving transportation trends and declining gasoline demand threaten existing ethanol markets that many rural economies depend on today. This study outlines a path forward. It explains how biofuels can usher in a new era of prosperity and abundance, and that requires arming stakeholders with the best possible data. For too long, important decisions have been built on the assumption that demand for food, fuel, will naturally keep pace with rising yields. And for too long, agriculture has been treated as a zero-sum game, one where food, fuel, and other bio-based products compete against one another for limited resources. That is not what this data shows. As S&P Global Energy makes clear, sustaining investment in American agriculture will require more demand, not less. If we allow farmers to expand into new markets for biofuels, we can transform American agriculture, revitalize rural incomes, and provide global food and energy security. Under a high-growth scenario that S&P Global is going to share with us in a second, farmers could support a threefold expansion in biofuels production by 2050. Renewable fuels could capture more of the nearly 940 billion-gallon global liquid fuels market, including aviation and marine fuels. At the same time, rising demand for both food and biofuels would accelerate investment in advanced seeds, precision equipment, regenerative farming practices, really the entire ag supply chain, both upstream and downstream from the farm. And with the right demand signals, U.S. corn yields could grow approximately 1.5% annually through 2050, enabling nearly 50% more production without expanding acreage. And I think that's an important point. We don't need more land, and this report points that out. And it's not just corn. U.S. soybean production could increase by 45%, or 1.4 billion bushels. The result isn't just more biofuels. It would increase overall feed and supplies by 45% compared to baseline scenarios. Put simply, biofuels are a game changer we need to unlock the potential of agriculture. The numbers tell a very compelling story, as you'll see in a second. But for now, it is my pleasure to turn it over to our first speaker today, the senior senator from Iowa and one of biofuels' greatest champions. Please welcome Senator Chuck Grassley.
Well, I'm here to thank you. Anything that will help us move E15 along, and your organization and your study helps do that, and I would explain to you why I feel that way. It's an honor for me to host this release of this study today and the organization that's behind it. As you might expect, nobody needs to twist my arm to celebrate America's homegrown biofuels. Thank you for the work that you do to drive economic growth and innovation in rural America. I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with your grassroots coalition representing American farmers, ranchers, and workers who feed and fuel the world. The report that you're releasing backs up what I've been saying for years. Biofuels are good for rural economy, good for national security, good for the environment, and good for American pocketbooks. In other words, good, good, good. Or you could go by the Campbell soup commercial, good. My home state of Iowa is the nation's leading biofuels producer. Last year, Iowa produced 4 6/10 billion gallons of ethanol, 266 million gallons of biodiesel. These domestic markets drive 5 4/10 billion of Iowa's gross domestic product and supports 31,000 jobs. Make no mistake, Iowa has the capacity to produce more biofuels to meet demand and support livelihoods in our rural communities for generations to come. At my 99 county meetings that I hold every year, I hear from farmers facing high input costs and commodity prices below the cost of production. A robust biofuels market that will be enhanced by E15 would answer the prayers of farmers working their tails off to be profitable. That's why I'm fighting for permanent year-round E15. Making this option available by law would save Americans 20 to 40 cents a gallon at the pump, sometimes even more. It would pump billions of dollars into local economies from the paychecks of biofuel workers and corn farmers, and would see $14 billion in expanded demand for their products. That robust revenue stream will strengthen rural communities, supporting schools, hospitals, infrastructure, economic vitality on Main Street. Thanks to the bipartisan House vote last month, we're one step closer to getting E15 across the finish line. The report that you are releasing will help grow momentum to get E15 through the Senate and through the President's desk. Enacting E15 is a perfect way to celebrate America's 250th years of freedom. It will give farmers the freedom to choose cheaper fuel at the pump and unleash innovations for the next generation biofuels, including aviation and maritime markets, and it will put America's energy security first. For 250 years, American farmers have embraced new technology to improve productivity using less resources. Getting rid of outdated EPA red tape will boost economic freedom for farmers, biofuel producers, and fuel retailers. As a lifelong family farmer and U.S. Senator for Iowa, I welcome today's report. Thank you. That shows the facts that are on our side. American-made biofuels reflect American values of competition, choice, and innovation. As far as I'm concerned, E15 is an American as motherhood and apple pie. Now, that's the end of my remarks, but if I got a couple more minutes I could take, I'll give you some background on where we are. Remember, we've had E15 nationwide year-round by presidential waiver. During that period of time, we have never heard anything from small refineries. We've never heard anything from the American Soybean Association. Now, I know you folks aren't taking a position on a specific bill, but we got to work something to get it done. So I see an opportunity here to move it, but so does small refineries to get their fingers in the cookie jar, to get some of the benefit from it that we never heard anything about for the last 8 years. And we never heard from the American Soybean Association that they didn't like certain things in it. Now, in Iowa, it's 50% for the average family farmer is 50% soybean and 50% corn. Don't think the Iowa farmers care about what the American Soybean Association comes up now. Now, they say they aren't taking a stand maybe right now. Do we really know where they are? They should be for help us get a bill through the United States Senate. Don't stand on the sidelines. The American family farmers, this is the opportunity. And if it can come up as a separate bill on the United States Senate, that's the ideal way to do it. But you got to have 60 votes to do it. I think with 4 weeks in July, no weeks in August, 2 weeks in September, the month of October's off. If we don't get this on the Armed Services bill, if we don't get it on the Farm bill, if we don't get it on some appropriation bill, then you get into continuing resolutions, and everybody in the Senate says we have to have a clean continuing resolution. You get a continuing resolution till Thanksgiving, you don't get appropriation bills, and you move to Christmas, you don't get appropriation bills, and then you're into next year, and we've lost all opportunity. So we not only need a plan to get a final agreement on the language of the legislation, but we got to have a process. And that's where we are. And we got at least 28 senators that ought to be working together to find this, because there's that many senators that come from corn country. In fact, corn is the only product, only grain in the United States that's raised in all 50 states. So somebody's going to benefit from this in every state. But we got to move. And it's almost too late now if we don't get some action. So anything you can do to help, and this report is going to help, I'm going to say, God bless you.
Yes. Thank you, Senator. That was almost a mic drop moment there. That was, I think you could see the passion coming through, certainly. Our next speaker, I'm really pleased to introduce a good friend of mine, Chip Bowling. Chip is a Maryland farmer, serves as the vice chairman of U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action, and he's a past president of the National Corn Growers Association. He has a couple comments. Chip?
Thank you, Kevin. I don't know that I can follow the senator. I have a few times, but I can't today. As Kevin said, I farm only 45 miles south of where we're sitting here today. I farm in Maryland in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So I see what's going on as a farmer every day. American agriculture is at a turning point. Costs for fuel, fertilizer, and other farm inputs are too high. Crop prices have stayed mostly flat, if not trending down. And many farm families like mine are feeling the financial pressures not seen since the 80s farm crisis. At the same time, we're producing more grain than ever thanks to higher yields and better technology, but demand hasn't kept pace. This means too much supply chasing too little demand. Population growth is slowing, driving patterns are changing, and without new demand, the current ethanol blend rates for U.S. corn would need to cultivate roughly 31% fewer acres by 2050. That's the equivalent of the size of North Carolina. That would devastate communities like mine. It would mean more struggling family farms, fewer local agribusiness jobs, closed equipment dealerships, and more young people moving to cities rather than continuing generational farms. And rather than increase food production, it would literally take food off of kitchen tables. This study shows the possibility if farmers are given the opportunity to expand into new markets for on and off road transportation, including aviation and marine fuels. We have a proven roadmap for success. Biofuels lifted rural America out of the 80s farm crisis. It lifted us out of the mid-2000s crisis, and they can do it again. Demand for new markets will stabilize incomes, keep crop acres in production, and allow rural communities to plan and invest for the future. That stability matters locally. It keeps co-ops open. It keeps truckers moving. It keeps rail trains moving. It sustains input suppliers, and it helps keep small-town economies functioning. In other words, this study is a blueprint for a stronger future for American agriculture and rural communities together. But to make that vision a reality, we need to take a fresh look at the data and recognize that we don't need more cropland to feed and fuel the world. We need access to stronger markets. And my hope is that this new study is a roadmap towards a brighter future for agriculture and my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Chip. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Kelsey Barnes is the Senior Advisor to U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins and she works on rural development and biofuels. Kelsey, please.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I apologize that y'all got the shorter, brown-haired, brown-eyed girl from rural America. That's a little less important at USDA, but on behalf of Secretary Rollins, when I explained to her this report, she was incredibly grateful for the work that you all are doing on this. For the Secretary, putting farmers first is the absolute number one thing that she thinks of when she wakes up, and that could be at 4 a.m. a lot of mornings, and it's the last thing that she thinks of when she goes to sleep at night, which is usually 11 p.m. or later, and I get text messages between that range pretty much every day about what we are doing that day to put American farmers first. The Secretary is incredibly supportive of biofuels. I genuinely believe that this is the most pro-biofuels administration that we have seen. That's not just coming from a senior advisor to the Secretary, but also coming from a farm kid from small town in rural America. Our family farms corn and soybeans, and we have a cow-calf operation, and sell to a number of member companies who are supportive of this. So I understand biofuels not only from the domestic market opportunity, but also from rural development, rural revival. I have yet to see mega oil companies come into rural America and make investments into the Little League team. And I can say that in Obion County, Tennessee, we've seen that. Most recently, just a month ago, and this company doesn't even know it, but they made a donation to a classroom at Lake Road Elementary School, which is where I went to school. My mom taught there for 30 years. My sister's working on her 20th year. And it was a biofuel company who made a donation to her classroom, having no connection. There is no ethics push here. But I just want to bring that out, that biofuels are not just for the farmer, but they are creating a lot of very successful jobs for rural America. In that light, we want to keep it going. We've had a hard run over the past year for biofuels and a lot of success with the administration. This is one of the number one issues for me. I work on several issues for the Secretary. This is a top one. This is also usually the hardest one I have to fight for. Those who know me personally know that I get a lot of joy out of that. So it's been a hard road in some aspects. I could not do what I do advocating on behalf of biofuels without you guys. Without the science, the research, the data to back up everything that we want to do on biofuels, it wouldn't be possible. So a lot of the very technical conversations and even sometimes political conversations that I have either with the White House or the Department of Energy or Treasury come down to what does the science say? So when you create reports like this, it's incredibly helpful for us as we're advocating for you. I think it's incredibly helpful for farmers to understand just how much goes into biofuels and into the market. And it's incredibly important for our economists. Our chief economist at USDA, Justin, is new to his role, but has done an incredible job. And every day when it comes down to biofuels, at the end of the day, the Secretary wants to know the numbers. And the numbers are on our side. We saw the RVOs come out. It's already starting to trickle down and not just create a significant demand for soy, but also a significant demand for creating jobs and expanding businesses in rural America. That's something we're keeping track of. So as you guys see those expansions, those developments, always feel free to send those my way. When it comes to the president, who knew that a New York City oil and gas and developer would be so supportive of biofuels? A lot of kudos to him, but also to the Secretary who's constantly in his ear reminding him that farmers love him and we need to continue to put farmers first. But just a few examples. On day one of when the president started, we put out an executive order on domestic energy policy, and biofuels for the first time was included in that. Then again, just a few months ago, we finally saw the RVOs come out. These are the highest RVOs in the history of the renewable fuel standard. So that's something that we're very proud of, and we're seeing that trickle-down effect of that take off. And then let's see, 2 months ago now, I forget what month it is, we did the second year of summer waivers. And then the president's been very publicly supportive of E15. Most recently, when he and the secretary were in Wisconsin, the president, unprompted, made sure to bring up E15 and remind the farmers that he is very supportive. So we were happy to see that get through the House. We know that the Senate is working through that. The secretary had a Senate Agriculture Committee hearing last week, and I would say one of the top three, out of the top three things that got brought up during the hearing, biofuels is one of those. And she reinstated again that she is unequivocally supportive of the Senate passing E15. So those are some things that we have done over the past year, and I also want to talk about the future. Something that I think we don't talk enough about is the regenerative feedstock rule. So in the last administration, they started talking about a climate smart rule. We have renamed that to the regenerative feedstock rule, in part because the rule is about a carbon intensity score. And carbon intensity scores are based off of how much carbon you are sequestering in the soil. It genuinely is about soil health. This administration, along with MAHA, is very focused on regenerative agriculture. And I believe with this role, we have a unique opportunity to be able to not only invest in farmers, but invest in converting some farms that might not typically into being more regenerative and using conservation practices. So we have been working on this role significantly. I think it's going to be great for biofuel producers. It's going to be great for our farmers who are able to receive a premium for using conservation practices. We very much look forward to that. I get to blame my tardiness actually on meeting with the Maritime Fuel Coalition before I walked in here. That is something that we are also meeting about regularly and talking to the Department of State regularly. I know last year whenever we came out that we were not going to support the framework, it made a lot of people nervous. Just because we're not going to support a net zero framework that is really good for Brazil does not mean that we're not going to support a framework for our farmers to be able to benefit from maritime fuels. So I think that that's a next big lever that we are looking at. So I appreciate the report greatly. I think now that we've accomplished quite a bit over the last year, we have more to do. I think there's more opportunities to lie. Maritime being one of those, this regenerative feedstock rule that the Secretary has committed to getting out this summer being another, and then also continuing to look at SAF and the opportunities of sustainable aviation fuel. So I want everybody to rest assured that this remains a top priority with the Secretary. She is down in Texas fighting screwworm right now, which is a little more immediate of an issue. But this is still a top priority. This is quite literally something that I'm working on daily and happy to do that. Look forward to seeing corn prices rise. Look forward to seeing soybean prices rise. Looking forward to our farmers making a profit again. So again, appreciate this report, your support in the audience, meeting with me, educating everybody across the agencies and on Capitol Hill is incredibly crucial. So continue those efforts, continue reminding farmers that we are doing this for them. We want them to be profitable again. They are at the first and forefront of our minds. And we look forward to a bright future over the next 2.5 years of continuing to put biofuels at the forefront. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey, and thank you for the support of biofuels and U.S. agriculture, and keep working on that maritime opportunity, please. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Minnesota Senator Tina Smith, another champion for U.S. biofuels, who would like to make a few comments.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Have you been in this room like all afternoon? I hope not. Because it is a beautiful day in Washington, D.C., not too hot. I was home in Minnesota this weekend, and it was gorgeous. So I hope you get a chance to enjoy the day while you're here. Well, really, I am just here to say thank you. Thank you for this incredible report, Fueling Agriculture Biofuels as a Catalyst. And as I was thinking about coming to visit with you, one of the very first things I learned as a policymaker about agriculture in Minnesota was when I first became chief of staff for the governor and then lieutenant lieutenant governor, and I learned about the power of value-added agriculture as a way of keeping more money in farm communities in the United States, in Minnesota. And so what you're doing today with this is really, to me, sort of connecting with the absolutely most biggest opportunity that we have for value-added agriculture. I have long been a strong supporter of biofuels and ethanol. This is a way for us to get cleaner energy, renewable energy, lower cost energy, and to create homegrown pathways for cutting costs and keeping economic opportunity here in the United States and here in my home state of Minnesota. You know, I am part of a great bipartisan coalition of senators with Senator Klobuchar and the North Dakota and South Dakota senators, all the senators in the upper Midwest that understand so well what an opportunity this is for our farmers. And especially as we are sitting here in a moment where it is a rough road to hoe, as my grandmother used to say. It is a tough time in agriculture. We are seeing, I think, an agricultural system that is, you know, kind of maybe more fundamentally out of whack than what we have typically seen with sort of cycles that go up and down. We have a need to boost demand for commodity crops. We have a need to figure out steps that we can take to bring down the input costs that farmers are experiencing, which is meaning that way too few farmers are actually able to see a way through to making a profit this year. And so putting a big emphasis on how biofuels and ethanol, all biofuels, can kind of be a path forward to a new structural, a new structure for agriculture is just really exciting. I'm very glad to see it. And I want to just emphasize something, which is that traditionally in the Senate, agriculture, broadly speaking, and biofuels as well, has been a bipartisan issue. I talk with the Majority Leader, John Thune, about this all the time. In fact, just a couple of, last week we were talking about how we want to work together to try to get year-round E15 done. And that is, we have to hold on to that in a moment where, honestly, a lot of what happens in Congress is way too divisive. This is, I think, a place where we ought to be able to find some common ground. We are making headway here. It is sometimes hard to see it, but reports like you are putting out here is just so important for kind of lifting us all out of the day-to-day and helping us see what we actually can accomplish. I've learned so much from Minnesota producers about the power of biofuels and ethanol and sustainable aviation fuel and all the opportunities that we have, and I want to really help make sure that those opportunities are a reality. So thank you so very much to everybody, especially any Minnesotans that are in the room. It's wonderful. They're waving at me. This is a very Minnesota thing to do. It's like, hi, I'm here. Yeah. I also just want to add that, I will be leaving the Senate at the end of this year. I will be retiring, and as will Senator Klobuchar. So you'll have two new Minnesota senators to break in, let's say, on these big issues. But I want to just follow with a personal thanks to everybody who has been, I've had a chance to work with in this room, who've been such a huge help to me as I've really learned so much about what makes agriculture tick in my state and in the Midwest and really all throughout the country, and really helping me to understand how opportunities around biofuels are really kind of the kernel for what we can do when we work together. So just a huge thanks, everyone. And I appreciate the invitation to be with you for a few minutes. Thanks a lot.
And we're almost at the end here, and we'll take a few questions. I just want to leave you with one other point, though, before we do that. We mentioned this at the beginning. Agriculture is at a crossroads. There are some people who think where we are now is just before, is very similar to what happened in the 1980s, when 300,000 U.S. farms defaulted on the loan. It created a rural recession that lasted a generation. And this report points out a path forward and shows how biofuels can help restore profitability to struggling farms, turbocharge innovation, and expand ag's capacity to feed and fuel the world using fewer resources. This food versus fuel narrative, which frankly is not as prevalent as it used to be, especially in the U.S., that needs to go away. And this report, I think, shows how to do that. Biofuels did it before. in terms of helping restore profitability to agriculture, and biofuels can do it again.